Child. Adult. How does it work? That is what we will be answering today. I will be showcasing you the inner workings of my child to adult timeline switcheroo. Have I prepared anything for this video yet? Not at all. This is going to be a long, bloated video that I will cut down into an efficient, clean video of some kind. Things that we must consider. Items. How do we store things? There's a few different ways, but we'll start with the shulker storage method first. Ignoring how the actual switch activates for now, let's just focus on this file here. This runs when a switch has occurred, whether you've switched to adult or child. In our case, we're going to be a child and we're going to switch to an adult. So if we're an adult, we want to go to adult. Not all items get stored in the exact same slot, but there's other items that like stay in the same like slot that you last left them in. And that is done by using shulker storage. On a very simple basis, let's get some grass, whoop, and some stone, whoop, and we are going to run this. And what this is doing is it is storing our inventory into storage. What storage is? I don't know. Storage is just like a place that you can call and like get NBT data. Here's a more simple version of this, I suppose. Data get and see inventory. So this is everything that is in our inventory right now. That is all the NBT that tells you all the slots that each piece of stone is, how much stone is in each of those slots, and we are storing that information into this child hotbar text. Hopefully that makes sense. Once we do that, we do a bit of shenanigans. Because a shulker only has 27 slots, the hotbar doesn't really fit including the inventory, and this data get inventory actually includes the hotbar slots. So I separate those into child hotbar and child inventory. This is the child hotbar, so I get the inventory and remove all the actual inventory slots, except for the hotbar, which is 0 through 8. It's probably a little bit easier to see child inventory instead, where it's the inverse version of that, where we store it into this thing, we remove the first 9 slots, and it gets a little more silly again because we then shift everything up again. So obviously slot 9 is where the inventory starts, which is like probably that slot or this slot. I'm pretty sure it's this slot. It goes 0 through 8 and then 9 through 26, 27. So we set slot 9 to 0 and then just kind of keep doing that until we get that all done. Storing offhand, that's its own thing. So kind of the same thing as before. We were using I don't know if there's something specific with the child offhand here. I feel like these are doing almost the same thing, but maybe there's something specific about this one being set to 0. Regardless, it's saving that offhand slot to the first slot in the shulker box and then just applying it later. Last but not least, armor. Same sort of thing, ignoring these parts in each file. For now, I'll explain that later. We get the equipment NBT data stored in the child armor, and then set 0 through 3 for each slot, so that it goes like shulker box 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, boots, pants, chest plate, helmet, and then boom, we've stored all the information we possibly could need from the player into storage. From there, we just clear the player. We've already saved their data, we're done with them, clear them, wipe them out. And now it is time to apply the adult information. We go to apply adult. What we do is under the map, under the ground, we fill a shulker box directly below the players. Let's pretend we're an adult right now and we are storing the adult inventory. So now all of this has been stored as an adult. So we're going to use this shulker box as an example. If I modify this shulker box with adult hotbar information, nothing happens. There we go. If we modify it with the inventory, it's going to copy the hotbar first because obviously we didn't do that adjustment. Again, that is why we remove the first 9 slots and then condense everything down so that it properly sets it in the shulker box here. Once we actually like apply it into the shulker box, that's when we run this loot function, and that directly sets it into our inventory here. So if I do loot here, again, ignoring the offset situation here, it restored all of our stuff in the exact same slots and everything, which is really cool. And we also just pretty much do the exact same thing for the adult inventory, the offhand, hotbar, armor, all of that pretty much does the same exact thing. Great. That's a great core mechanic feature example of how all that works. There's a lot of like edge cases that you need to keep track of. So like if you're a child and you have 40 bombs, you can't actually store bombs as an example in this method because we need to always track how much the player has. So in that same file with the shulker thing where it's like, oh, we need to go to adult, we have a separate function before the store method called check transferable items. Literally, we just clear the item, the ammunition items, and then store it in a score at the same time. So it's like, boom, 39 bombs, cleared them, stored them in a score. It's very similar to this situation where we store the inventory slots and everything and clear it. We just happen to do this beforehand because we don't want that to get in the way of the actual locations and store like the incorrect number of bombs, blah, blah, blah. Because the biggest thing to keep in mind is like, why can't we just do it in here? Because like it's transferring directly. It's because we're storing it for child, but going an adult. So we're not like applying the child in that situation. We're doing that when we get turned back eventually. So if we have 39 bombs, we store that and apply those 39 bombs to the adult, and then we use more bombs. It's going to, when we go back to child, it's going to apply that child, which still had that 39 bombs saved, and apply that instead of the saved ones that we had from the new switch. Does that make sense? Are you getting that? Am I a good explainer? I'm not good at this. It's kind of gross, but we can actually do the same sort of thing with the bottles. So like, obviously there's 4 bottles in the game. If you have multiple of the same bottled item, it still stores it in a score, so it knows how many to get back. All of these scores will eventually add up to 4. It's kind of funny thinking about it. If you had a big pony from adult timeline, you could technically have it as a child, which is totally useless. Rupees also work the same way. That's technically like a consumable or ammo in a way. I guess it fundamentally works the same way at least. And now for the fun one. How did I do this part again? What's the reason for this? That's why! I remember now. The reason this is important actually is because this prevents duplication, I suppose. Let's say I have DINS Fire, I switch between adult and child. If I was using the original shulker storage method, when I go to adult, we would have had a DINS Fire saved as child. So if we put this in this chest and then went back to child, we would now have that DINS Fire still because it was stored. Adult would no longer have it stored, but we would have one as a child. Then if we went back to this chest that we stored it in, we'd now have 2 DINS Fires as a child and 0 as an adult. This prevents that issue where it allows us to always have 1 at all times, and it properly transfers everything as expected. That includes all of these here as well. The last major part of this that I'm remembering right now, at least, is items that are specific to adult and child. So eventually when randomizer gets implemented, or even if you just like broke the game's sequencing of some kind, let's say you're a child and you somehow obtain a hookshot. Well, there is a check to make sure that that gets stored, kind of similar in this situation where it like checks what you have and then clears it and stores it as a score for you to then re-obtain once you're in the proper timeline. This utilizes an advancement to prevent it from having to check what the player's inventory looks like on tick. So these 2 advancements basically just check if the item that you have has either adult item or child item, which means it's specific to that timeline. It will then run the store item check. So I'm a child, I get the hook shot. It will find that, oh, you have a child or an adult item. Let me go ahead and store that for you because you're an idiot. And then it runs the disgusting file to figure out what item it is, of which it then clears it, saves it to a score, and then if that score is more than 0, it then gives it to you once you're at the correct timeline. But yeah, those are kind of the main 3. There's the shulker storage, there's the score storage, and then there's the adult/child specific storage, which we just went through just now. Here's also at the end of the 2 child and 2 adult things. Here's where it actually returns those items that are stored. This is applied after the shulker loot apply aspect happens. So this then checks for all those tags and scores to see what needs to be given back to the player. This part's a little gross because I guess you can't really do a direct /give command. So what you have to do is you have to summon it directly at the player's location. So I summon a singular rupee. I then get how many green rupees I'm supposed to have and apply that to the item count for that entity. So that when you drop 1 rupee, it then applies 64 to it, and then it makes it 64 and it gives it to you afterwards because you just pick it straight up. In order to prevent other people from picking it up actually as well, if you're two both like right on top of each other, I automatically set the summon items to owner 000, which means no one can pick them up. And then at the very end, I then apply it to the nearest player, which it's already being executed at the nearest player. So it then applies the UID to the item, so only the player that matches that UUID picks it up. As for how this actually starts and stops, there's a specific check at the Master Sword pedestal in particular, but I actually technically have this modular enough that you can just use this anywhere. What the grabbing the sword and placing the sword does is it just adds and removes the adult check here. And in order to prevent the like actual switching from being checked on tick here. I just have another tag that gets added at the end. So pretty simple method of just having that taken care of. That way when I'm debugging, I can quickly swap back and forth without having to like go pick up the master sword or something. And then I think the last major aspect of this is kind of what you were seeing before with these weird dollar signs and stuff. This is called macros. This actually modularizes it to allow it to have like technically an infinite amount of players. Don't do that, please. I don't even think the game can handle 4 players at a normal speed right now. But to explain what this is doing in the best way that I can explain, because this is still pretty new to me as well. Right now, when a player joins, they obtain an index via a score. So I am player 0 right now. Next player would be player 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. Similar to the data storage where I was storing the NBT data, I can actually just also store singular values into storage. Why I have to do this? It's because this is the only thing you can actually pass along through functions. So this is running this function while also passing 0 for me, for example. But if someone else ran this at the same time, it would pass it as 1, 2, 3 for whichever player they are. When that happens, we then store their specific ID when we get their inventory. So if we get my inventory, it stores it to child_hotbar.0. If someone else switched, they would store their inventory to player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Which then means I can do the same thing vice versa, where I apply it to adult, which actually I am missing. And boom. So once you apply it and save it and everything, you can then apply it at the end and does the same thing where it specifically passes that index to make sure that the correct player receives the correct inventory stuff. This is actually a really powerful feature that I'm still kind of figuring out how to use properly. Because while you can like insert values, you can actually also like straight up insert pieces of function code. I think I was also missing part. I'm pretty sure this is also supposed to be at the end here. I need to test it again to make sure. This is another situation where I was supposed to record this like days ago. Other reasons this is cool. Currently, I'm actually working on a spin attack feature right now. New magic, new items. We'll kind of talk about the items eventually in another video here soon. Spin attack is now a feature. Ooh, sneak peek, beautiful. This has a new magic system set up, and it's really cool because using freaking experience point checks are disgusting. So if you use experience add, I really shouldn't get into this right now. I just want you to not judge me when I show you the file that I have. So you can query, set and add and remove points, experience points. Adding and removing experience points only lets you do integer values. However, it saves it as a float value, and therefore when you remove 12 points consistently and you start at 84 points or 48 points and you remove like 12, 24, or 36, it's not going to be 12 at the end. It's going to be like 11 or something stupid. So I can't add and remove points feasibly, so I have to set them manually. So keep that in mind when I show you this function and just pretend that doesn't exist. I just want to show you why macros are cool and where else you can use them in practical application. So what you can do is you can run this function where it does this meter check where it checks what your score is to set your experience to that score number. Again, these are kind of like the custom names. These don't really matter what you name them, but it is what you like identify as in the actual function itself. So I put in the word remove and then I put an integer of 1 because when you do a spin attack, you only lose 1 experience point. That runs this scoreboard. So scoreboard's players remove magic 1. So it's removing 1 from the scoreboard magic. If I were to change this from remove to add, I can make it add to the scoreboard. So not only does it work like as an integer where you can like pass values and stuff, you can actually just straight up pass strings and like parts of code. That's really cool to me. It's very neat. There's a lot of places I could use this and like simplify the code. Finally, to finish off, we'll kind of just talk about some of the settings that I'm going to apply to the game that you can use. Now that people know that multiplayer is a thing, eventually multiplayer PvP will be an option to turn on and off, so items may or may not damage you. There's also an adult/child switch, or size. So if I am a child, this actually changes the height that I am. If I'm an adult, it doesn't make any difference, but you can turn that on and off. By default, it will be turned on though, so you'll always just be a little bit shorter when you're a child. Crouch navi, this is still from the original game. You can turn on and off crouch navi. Skip cutscenes, those are still the same. When you turn that on, you don't have to jump, it just automatically skips through it as fast as possible. Additional settings that I'll be adding, one hit KO. If you take a single hit of damage, I'm probably just going to straight up kill the player. Definitely a pretty big challenge for sure, especially if you have multiplayer life sync on, where if anyone takes damage, everyone receives that same damage. These can be used together or separately. Rupee sync was another thing. I don't know how difficult that one will be to implement, but I will try to add rupee syncing so that whenever people use money, it syncs and works as you'd expect. I'm open to more setting suggestions, so definitely let me know if you have anything of opinion there. Randomizer will be its own category of settings, of course, so this is more for just like default vanilla stuff, multiplayer or single player. So any settings that can apply to that without randomizer in consideration, definitely let me know. But yeah, that is the adult child switch along with the return items and some of the settings. Next video, we'll probably talk about how some of the items work and how things are being adjusted there, as well as maybe how enemies attack and how the differences again there with the update. Because there are quite a few changes both in terms of just like models, mechanics, item features. Again, there's a spin attack now, so that's cool. And just the fact that the magic bar looks totally different now too. It's actually using the bar and not just a number for the level. And yeah, stay tuned for that. Battle Buddies, I'm still suffering, so wish me luck there. You guys should watch that video again. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this was at least educational in some way. I don't usually do like tutorial videos, but this is probably the closest I've done because I do think it is very cool to see in depth exactly how that Master Sword switch occurs. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.